Hello, everybody. I hope that you are well and having a great day wherever you may be. Hopefully, you are safe and in good spirits. Today, I have Jay Colby. He is a writer and entrepreneur. Jay founded the Black Detour to not only change the often negative perception of Black people in mainstream media, but to create a space where Black people can speak their voices freely. How are you this morning, Jay?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's always pleasant to speak with people uh, of like mind who have, share a lot of the same stories and talk about a lot of the same topics. And we've been in communication before, so I know this is going to be a great discussion we're about to have today about the black new media and the importance of black new media. I guess we can start out by saying, just tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a writer, entrepreneur, just somebody who was writing for different online publications and different news media outlets and wasn't feeling like my voice was being heard in the right way that I wanted to be. So I wanted to create something for my people and something that we can go to and we can have our own platform so we can have our voices heard freely and everybody can know where we stand in this country today. So that's one of the main reasons why I started the Black Detour and started the independent media outlet.
Right. That's great, and that's similar to why I started Black and Intellectual, which is one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on because I like talking to other Black people in new media who are trying to do the same things. Because one thing I notice is, the more people I talk to, you start to see that a lot of us have a lot of the same issues that we address. There are a lot of the same problems that we all face. So yeah, so that's great, and I'm gonna jump to a question I was gonna wait to ask you, but it really is pressing me right now. So I do want to ask you, what role, if any, did the uprisings in Ferguson and Baltimore have on you starting the Black Detour?
Oh, it had a lot of influence because at the time, a lot of that was going on. I was in college and I saw a lot of that happening at the time. And so that was a key factor in me starting the Black Youth. So not knowing I was going to start there, but knowing I wanted to do something. Knowing I knew something had to change. I wanted to have a part in that. So just seeking different things and seeking what can I do during that time and then end up becoming the Black Detour later on, years later. But yeah, it was definitely a spark.
Right, and yeah, because I was honestly in college myself, and one of the first things I noticed was how lopsided and how biased the coverage was of both of those events. Um, every time I noticed the media talked about a protest or some form of activism that was going on in the community, the knee jerk reaction was always to assume whatever the government or whatever law enforcement was saying was the gospel, and they were never wrong. They were never biased in their own way. And then too, I also noticed that the media only came around when they had something negative to say. I especially noticed this with Baltimore, and maybe it's because I'm from Baltimore. Some people might know that, some people might not know that, but yeah, I'm from Baltimore, and so that hit home for me more than any of the other ones. And Baltimore has a very rich legacy of resistance and like rebellion against racism and just things the state was doing. So yeah, I think it definitely had a huge impact on me. I think it had a huge impact on a lot of people. And like, how did you react to some of those events that were going on at the time?
At the time, I remember we had conversations. All my roommates, we were just all sitting in the living room, all Black men, just having these conversations. And these conversations that we always usually don't have, especially on the college campus, being around 20 years old. Around, people don't have these conversations. So it was a very important moment that I could reflect on at the time. Like, wow, this is amazing because this doesn't always happen. We're
Right.
having these conversations and we getting different perspectives, and you see the difference in perspectives of all the people in the room. Even though we all made from a similar background, but we all have different perspective of what we should do next or what's going to happen next. And
Right.
it was a time of a lot of uncertainty because a lot of people didn't know what was going to happen next. People just seeing stuff on the news just like you were seeing on the news. So
Right.
everybody was trying to figure out what was going on, what's true, what's not, looking at Twitter, because that's when kind of the Twitter was emerging of you could find news quick on Twitter than
Right.
you could going through a regular news meter waiting for it to come on TV. So that was basically a lot of thoughts that was going on at the time.
Right. And I noticed, like, yeah, it was Twitter, and I saw a lot of it on Facebook as well. And I mean, it seems like I might be getting my years wrong, but it seems like that was back during a time when like Facebook was mostly college students. It seemed like, and but now it's become something else. And I think honestly, when you look back at that time, you look at how Black people were able to use social media to really propel certain narratives forward. Um, it seems like maybe it's just my opinion. It seems like a lot of that has been co-opted to a certain extent. Like it doesn't seem like it's as easy to do that nowadays as it was back then. Have you felt the same way, or is it just me?
I would say it is harder to build like your platform. Now you can obviously speak out what you want to do, but to actually have like people to see it and reach out to, because the algorithms with social media now has become kind of in a way that if you don't pay for ads or you not really have a big following, or somebody who has a big following who's retweeting you or posting your stuff, then it can be difficult. And that way to have your voice is heard. But it's a lot of people having their voice heard. It's just to a small group of people.
Right, right,
Because
right,
a lot of people speaking out, it just they might only have 200, 300, or maybe even really a small amount, is really 10,000 or less.
right,
So if you got 10,000 or less, it's a small group that's going to really see your tweets or your posts on any social media platform. So building your platform is more difficult now, because back then you could basically say something real quick and you get 10,000 followers.
right,
Because everybody was just going, especially during the Ferguson time. If you was out there live tweeting Ferguson or out there, a lot of those people organized from back at that point had a lot of followers who still today from that point.
right, right, right. Yeah, you're right about that. And so I mean, are there? Yeah, when I looked at history, I look because I studied history in college. It wasn't my major, but it was just something that I really focused a lot of attention on because history is something that even when you look at the Black community, it's something that it's kind of it's we've had to figure out sort of what our history was because there's a whole history of whitewashing of our history in America and going back to Africa or the Caribbean or wherever you're from. When I think about history, I think about how Black media or Black press back in the day, after the Civil War, around the time of the Civil War, during, around the time of slavery and abolition with, Frederick Douglass and some of those people. And then even after that, you had all sorts of mostly local Black newspapers. Unfortunately, a lot of those businesses are kind of, defunct now, and they have been for a while. But
Mhm.
are there any historic figures who have inspired you? Like, are there any? Is there anybody from the past who has influenced your thought more than others?
Oh, I would definitely say Ida B. Wells is one of the definitely journalists from the past that I definitely look at and see her journey and see what she went through. Is somebody definitely inspiration. Somebody
Okay.
wasn't necessarily a journalist, but a person who did write and did have his voice heard clearly was Malcolm X, who
Right. Right.
started a
Right.
nuspaper for the NOI at the time. So I feel like those are important figures you could look back at and seeing, of course, like you said, Frederick Douglass and all those people, and the people who started. I can't remember who started, but people who started the one of the first Black newspapers. I think it was the first Freedom Journal, and
Okay.
that was very important too, because that was the first ever Black newspaper in this country. So that was put out. I believe it came out in 1827. So that was very important.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, even back then, I've noticed something when it comes to Black media, Black press. Really, regardless of the era, it has always been about. It's always been about pushing back against false narratives that have been perpetuated about our community, and exposing some of the things that have been going on in our community that a lot of other groups of people just don't write about. Major like so. For instance, you can think about even like the era of lynching. Not only did, a lot of white owned newspapers or white owned publications promote that stuff, like they advertise a lot of that stuff in their own papers, but then you had others that didn't necessarily advertise it, but they didn't talk about it either. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
really shining a light on it. They weren't talking about what was going on. Like, so you needed an alternative Black media, an alternative Black press to address some of these issues. And so, like, problematic narratives are something that doesn't really seem to go away. Are there any narratives in particular that you want to address the most? Like, so I guess I can say, like, for me, it's always dealing with something, dealing with the state, dealing with unjust activities in the black community. But what about yourself?
Well, I mean, for me personally, I would say one of the key things that I want to change the narrative of is the narrative of the black man is lazy in this country.
Hmm.
The black man doesn't take care of his kids, and just the
Hmm.
black family in general, that we dysfunctional, that everybody come from a single parent household, that everybody is dysfunctional, nobody has a plan or plan of action, everybody just lazy sitting on the block waiting for the welfare check to come.
Right.
And that's one of the important narratives that I feel like we have to change within ourselves. Because we even make jokes about it within our own community, but we have to tell people those are just jokes and not the reality of the situation.
Right. Exactly. And I'm glad you said that because honestly, that isn't really something a lot of people focus on. Elaborate on that a little bit more for me. Like, what's what's driven you to focus on that?
Just because I've seen, especially through social media, how people want to denigrate and downplay the black man or just black people in general, especially the black women too, just downgrade, talk about, how we dress or how we may talk in our vernacular and how we're not intelligent, or we may come off, we have to be a certain way to be intelligent. We have to, code switch. We have to act a certain way to be who we are. And I feel like that's something important, that it comes down to the family structure that we don't always talk about. We talk about the problems in society, and that's great. And that's something we need to focus on just as well. But we also need to focus on the issues that people talk about our community from the outside and the perception of us. Because the perception of us and the reality is two different things.
Right, right, right. And then too, like, even when you look at some of the images, going to your point, when you look at some of the images that you see promoted domestically and internationally, when it comes to black people, it's usually something, maybe, every once in a while it's not the case, but there aren't enough Black Panthers, Black Panther movies to change, you know, decades worth of negative images about black people. And like you said, yeah, the idea that black people are lazy, and that honestly that goes back to daggone Birth of a Nation. Then not only did they perpetuate that image and Birth of a Nation, like and I'm not talking about the remake, I'm talking about the original. And the
Mm-hmm.
original Birth of the Nation, there was even, because everybody knows it was a silent film. There was a part in the clip, the movie, if you want to call it that, where they just show like these white actors in blackface, because they didn't actually have black actors. White actors in blackface, sort of like who were supposed to represent black people in Congress during Reconstruction, because during Reconstruction you had a lot of, you had a few black folks that actually made their way into Congress, into the House of Representatives and things like that. So they made a mockery of this. And they they would show them kind of sitting up on the with their legs, up on the stand or whatever like that, real denigrating stuff. And then even too, like if you look at just fast forward past that, past Birth of of our Nation, decades later, it's the image of the violent black male, the violent, black person, the overly aggressive black woman, and it's like these images are always meant to these images are always meant to serve a certain purpose, so that's another reason for why black new media is important. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because we have to be the one to author our own voices and our own opinion. If we don't, somebody else will do it for us, and they've done it already. But so we have to have our voices heard, especially in this age of we have social media, we have the internet, we have different avenues that we can have our voice heard, where in the past we couldn't.
Right, right, right. And then if we did in the past, it was always through their lens. Like, so you even kind of see this today. Like if you see a lot of black folks that you see in corporate media. With some people, I'm trying to get out of calling them the mainstream media. I slip up every once in a while, still call them mainstream, but I honestly really don't think they're mainstream. I just think they're corporatists. And like if you see a lot of black people who go into these shows, you even kind of can tell that they're forced to speak within a certain framework. I mean, that's changing a little bit. I am seeing, certain black voices, certain black commentators in the corporate media, they're being given a little bit more wiggle room, a little bit more leeway. But I honestly think that's because of people like you, people like me, people who even have people on social media or new media who have larger platforms than myself. It's us who are like pushing the narratives. We're the ones changing the narratives, not the people in the corporate media.
Oh, definitely, because with our voices heard, we're independent. We're not tied to a corporate backing, so we have no one to tell us, what can we say or how can we say it. The only
Right,
problem with that is I think a little bit does get confused between the person of somebody who's speaking truth and then somebody who is a journalist. And I think like some of them lines have been crossed, and I think people just need to define what they are, because some people are commentators, and some people are journalists, and some people are just analysts of the news.
right.
And there's nothing wrong with either one, but I feel like it can't get confusing because I feel like for the average person, they don't understand between somebody giving an opinion and what they say is news.
Right, right, and right, exactly. And you see this confusion a lot. Um, yeah, and then too, like in the media, you'll see they do this a lot, and they'll put someone on the media. And this might not even necessarily be a black person. It might be someone else, but they'll put somebody on the news, and they won't tell you like this person's affiliations. You know what I'm saying? Like, so they'll have this person up on TV giving their opinion, and I notice this especially with a lot of police brutality stories. When they every once in a while when they do talk about it, which we know most of the time they don't, but it's usually always somebody who is a former former cop, former whatever the case may be, and sometimes they don't even tell you that these people have these affiliations because and then this confuses people because people look at this and they think to themselves, oh, okay, this person knows what they're talking about because they're in a position of authority, or they wouldn't have them on television if they didn't know this. But you don't know that this person is biased. This person knows people who are directly implicated by the truth coming out, like, and who could be negatively impacted by the truth coming out. So yeah, that's definitely a true point. I agree with you on that. um, I want to ask you this. Can new media exist on platforms not owned by us without facing some sort of suppression? And what I mean by that is, I think it's I think about how easy it is for Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube to hide tweets, hide videos, delete entire groups. Like on Facebook, also people have had like groups deleted just because they were talking about white supremacy or something like that. Is the media alone is media and what I'm going to say is media alone going to be enough, or do we eventually need to think about having our own platforms in general?
Oh, definitely need to have your own platform, because at the end of the day, you don't own it. You have no control over when it comes down or what happens to it, or if it just goes down in general. Because
Hmm.
if everything is tied to a social media platform that you don't own, then at the end of the day, you don't own it. So you have
Right,
no control over if it goes down, or if they decide, well, we don't want your account, because like you said, a lot of people have got their accounts deleted. They got all their followers, everything that they built up gone in
right,
a matter of seconds.
right,
So you do need to have your own platform. That's why I encourage people at least have a website or something. So then people can go back to you if you do go down, or if something does happen to your social media platform, you have something else people can go back to. And it would be great if we could have a social media platform that was just for black people. However, we know that's so difficult and expensive to build, and the promotion and the marketing you would have to do to actually make something like that possible.
right.
So
Yeah,
we understand the reality that you do need social media in the sense of to get the voice out, just so people know about you, but you need to do the work on your website and then the work in public in the streets. So it
right,
won't just go away when, if an Instagram or Facebook or Twitter decide, you know what, we don't want your stuff on our platform anymore, or we're going to hold back your voice. Well, people still know you and know what you're doing because you're doing stuff in the streets and not just on social media.
right. And this honestly, this brings up another question. I wasn't even planning on asking you this, but I just thought about it now that you said that. What is your position on deplatforming? Because this is something that I have some of the circles that I travel in, it's something where deplatforming is obviously it's something that first of all it already happens to a lot of black voices, black commentators, black people on social media, and it just doesn't get any recognition. Like, so we just talked about how on Facebook and on YouTube black people have had their channels pulled, black people had like groups deleted and things like that without any type of notice, anything like that. And you can't even contact these groups, these companies, a lot of times to sort of inquire at, why this happened, or what was going on. They just kind of give you this flat response. But then, like, you look at some of these people like Alex Jones, Milo Yiannopoulos, some of these these grifters and these professional trolls who go onto these platforms, and they abuse the system. In my opinion, that's my bias, because I'm in favor of deplatforming. But what's your opinion of that?
I feel like it's a slippery slope.
Hmm.
I feel like that if we go around saying who we should deplatform, or who can't have their voices heard, then who's to say that one day we won't have our voices heard? We just say everybody can't. So I
Right,
feel like we had to really define who can have their voices heard. We live in a beautiful time where a lot of people can have their voices heard. Really, it seems like anybody can, right? It seems like
right.
anybody can pick up a microphone, anybody can pick up a video camera, anybody can write something, anybody can say whatever they feel, which is good in a way because you can have your voices heard. But it can be a way to get the truth and the true information confused, because anybody can say anything. And if you have a big enough platform, like you said, Alex Jones type or anybody similar to that ilk, that stuff can get confused. But I do feel like they have the right to have their voices heard, and I feel like it's up to us to debunk what they're saying if they're saying something negative, especially to our community and the Black community. So I don't really necessarily agree with that we should debunk people platform, but I do agree that some voices should be debunked. Like we should fight back at that.
Right, right. I feel you on that. I think we do have to, and this is hard because a lot of black new media. Well, there are some people, especially on YouTube and even on Twitter and other places, who have very large platforms. But I don't, when some of those voices were saying some of those things, it's like maybe it's my personal political bias, but one of the things that I'm trying to do with Black and Intellectual is something, build up something for like from a very progressive, because that's sort of my political affiliation. Very, I'm I'm a pretty leftist person, like so.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I don't really see is I don't I see people getting at Alex Jones, and I see like a lot of white commentators, a lot of white progressive commentators getting at him. One of the things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sort of build up my own thing to where I can do the same thing, but from a black perspective, from this perspective of people from our community. Because Alex Jones has said all kinds of like crazy shit about black folks, and like and the black community, about black activists. He's been saying crazy stuff for a long time, and I mean
Mm-hmm.
I just think that he kind of, I think he crossed the line and he went after the wrong people, and it turned around and it bit him in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, honestly, and then too, I think once you get to a point, because with him, he was like using rhetoric that was inspiring his followers to like go out and start threatening people. Like there was this incident where somebody that listened to him went to one of those locations where he was ginning up this conspiracy around those people, around that group. And one of his followers, one of his listeners, went there with a gun with the intention of doing something. I don't know what. And I mean, I just think that we're in a time when, with a lot of these mass shootings, with a lot of like divisiveness in the country, we're in a time right now where I think we have to be a little careful about some of the things that are said, or some of the things that people are platformed or allowed to say on certain platforms. Um, maybe you have a different opinion of that though.
No, I mean I agree with what you're saying. I think it also depends on your reach, because Alex Jones reached millions of people. We know who
Right,
we are.
right.
It's
Good
a
point.
lot of it's a lot of people who are Alex Jones who nobody really follow, nobody really knows. So are we going to take them off the line too? Because that's because they nobody really cares what they say, but should they be allowed to say it?
Right,
Because that's really the principle of the thing. Because the only reason Alex Jones or people similar to him is on our conversations because he has the platform. And now that since he's been taken off, certain websites and certain platforms now that his stuff has went down, I'm sure. But I'm sure that his voice is still being heard. So it's for him to say that he's not on YouTube anymore, or he's not on Twitter or whatever the social media sites that took him off. To say that his voice not being heard is an understatement, because he's still gonna be out there even if we try to silence him.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I think too, like some of the stuff that I talk about, like if you go to, and some of the stuff that you talk about on your platform as well, we both talk about stories that are not conventional, like the things that that's kind of the point for why the Black Detour and why Black and Intellectual exists as well, and other platforms as well. So yeah, it definitely can be something that can be used against us as well. So I mean, it is something
Because
that I
it's
think. Yeah, go ahead.
just to piggyback off, it actually happened to the Black Detour. We actually got took off on Instagram for 1 month
Oh wow.
for no explanation, no reason. So I can speak firsthand to know that it can happen. It's not. So that's what I'm saying. Just to take somebody off because you don't like what they're saying is kind of, it can be kind of, because they could take. I already did.
Right.
We was fortunate to get it back, but that was just a fortunate thing we was able to do. There wasn't a guarantee or anything that we really did to get it back. It just kind of really just popped back up, to be honest.
Did they ever give you an explanation for why that happened?
No,
Oh, I didn't think so.
they
Yeah,
just said we didn't follow some of the rules of Instagram. Basically, the generic statement that they say, but they didn't say like what specifically we did or what post did it happen. Because when we got our account back, all our posts were still there.
right, right, right.
So I don't know
Man,
what post that was, that upset somebody, or maybe we just kept getting reported. I don't know, but
yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy how they can just come along and just like just completely jack your stuff, and it's just like I don't know. It's I'm this is a little off topic, but I mean we're kind of in the same field. I mean the reason I asked you that question earlier about building your own platform is because I'm thinking like I wish we could like have our own social media platform, but something that would be decentralized, like so something that wouldn't be controlled by really any one group of person. It would be all like code, all like programming, like all on smart contracts for like the people who are familiar with like how blockchain works and things like that. I mean, I know that there are groups, not people associated with us, but I know that there are groups that are definitely working towards things like that. And I
mm-hmm.
mean, it would be nice to see something like that built, like for not even necessarily for like Black media, but for Black society in general. Like just a place where we can go and we can like have our opinions and have our views and not have to worry about being censored. Because you're right, Black people are censored. I mean, I know Black people have been kicked off of Twitter for like very innocuous things. I know Black people have had their YouTube channels deleted because what people do on YouTube is they just mass flag certain videos to get your channel shut down and get your video shut down. So it's crazy, and I mean I do agree with you. It is a slippery slope, but I wanted to ask you this too. What's one thing you tell people who might be looking to get into new media, might be looking to start their own platforms? So what's something that you could advise other people who want to talk about stories impacting the Black community?
Well, I would say first, if you really want that reach, or that, for people really to hear your voice, really try to build up your social media before, because that's what the Black Detour did. Before we even came out with our online publication, we wanted to build a good social media like following and people who knew who we are, to build a good audience. So when you do post your videos or post anything, writing or whatever you want to do, post that people actually be interested in it. Because I feel like a lot of people start platforms, but then the interest is not there. So then they kind of fall off on it if after a while, especially if it's a hobby or something you're just doing on the side of your regular 9 to 5 or your regular daily activities. Then that's what I would advise people. And I would advise people, don't do it for the numbers. Do it for that's something you want to do. Because a lot of times when you first start off, you won't have the numbers anyway. So you
Right.
need to just do it for something that you want to do. You want your voice to be heard. If only 5 people here, 10 people here, well, you still making an impact. And just keep building on that 5 to 10, get to 20, get to 30, get to 40, then you get to 100. And just keep building up. But that's what I
Right,
would tell people all the time. And then plus figure out what you actually good at too. Because some people are better at talking, some people are better at writing, some people are better at behind the scenes and just building something up. And some people are better at just contributing to something. Because I would say people don't always start something new, just work with somebody else who already has something going on. Because a lot of people have a lot of platforms already going on that need help and need other people to be involved to build their platform up too. Because I feel like a lot of Black people, we always want to have our own thing, but sometimes we got to come together at some point.
right, right, right.
Because all these small media platforms, if we come together, we can make a huge one. To be honest, and that's something that I would like to do one day too, is to come together with other smaller media platforms and come together and make a large one.
Right, and have a larger reach and have a
Yeah.
larger footprint. Yeah, that's right. Okay, and I
Because at
mean,
the end,
go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. But at the end of the day, the main goal, at least for me, is to have the biggest reach as possible to change a lot of people's minds. Because all media do is get into people's minds, and so the more reach you have, the better chance you have in doing that. So yes, you could be individual by yourself, but together we're stronger.
Right, right, right. And then yeah, that's a good idea actually. So I like that, and I would honestly suggest too as well. You said that focus on what you're good at. That's something that when I started Black and Intellectual, that's something that I probably should have spent a little bit more time on because I know I'm good at writing. I can if you give me enough time, I could throw together a 2 to 3,000, 4,000 word juggernaut of an article, easy. Like if I have enough time to do it, or I can write something that's 500 words, 400, 500 words, and just get
Mm-hmm.
a certain idea across. But yeah, it's like when I first started, it's like, okay, do I want to focus on YouTube, or do I want to focus on writing, or do I want a podcast? Because you really you can do multiple things at once, but you should really honestly focus on one thing. Would you agree with that?
Oh
Or
yeah,
no?
especially at first because you want to be great at one thing before you do everything. That's why a lot of people ask the Black Detour why we don't do videos yet or why we don't do this, because we want to be great at this first thing we do, and then we're gonna transition into something else, and then we'll be great at that. So we have two things we're great at, not just doing something okay, do something good, and do something. We want to focus, be great at something,
Right,
master that before you just try to do everything. Because a lot of times you're doing everything, you ain't doing nothing. A lot of time.
right, right, right. Okay, and what's one important story you've come across recently that you think folks should know about? Like something that hasn't really trended, but something that's really imperative for people to know.
Well, I would say one story that came across recently that one of our team members wrote about was the Dallas police chief who stand behind her decision to charge an assault victim that got assaulted by a white supremacist
Right,
in Dallas, Texas. And I feel
right,
like that was a very important story that people didn't really talk about because that was after the fact that she wasn't being charged anymore, and that was after the fact that he was already being charged and he's gonna facing some time. But the police chief, who is a Black woman, was basically defending her decision of charging her and saying there was a lot of miscommunication and other things going on, but still standing by her decision or their decision as the department to go ahead and charge her. So that was an important story that I feel like a lot of people may didn't know about and should know about.
right. And then I mean too, a story like that, because I did see that I saw that I saw that cross my news feed, my timeline on social media. I mean, a story like that too also kind of exposes how, just having, Black faces in certain positions, how that's, is hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, more oftentimes than not, it's a miss. I mean, I understand people have to work within certain structures and people have to work within certain systems. So I don't want to, I don't want to say that every Black person that gets into a position of power is doing something nefarious, but it's disheartening when you see so many examples. Post civil rights, you see so many examples of the opposite. So many examples of Black people kind of getting into positions, and instead of being vehicles for change or vehicles for reform, they get in and they do what's expected of them. And I do kind of want to segue into like another question. I don't know, for some reason I skipped this one. I wanted to ask you about the situation with Ilhan Omar, because that she's an example of a woman who has gotten into a position of power, and she's not doing what that the police chief that from the story that you just told us about. She's doing the exact opposite of that. She's doing the opposite of what you see a lot of black elected officials do. So what's been one of the recent news stories that shows that importance is that, and I think the Ilhan Omar story shows the importance of black new media, because you actually see how old media has reacted to her and how disingenuous a lot of the attacks have been. So, what's your opinion on that?
I mean, it's kind of refreshing to see somebody
Right,
speaking up and not being unapologetically about it, not being scared of the consequences that may come with it. Because a lot of times that's why people don't speak out, right? Because they don't want to speak out because they fear of losing their job or losing that position or losing that position of power. So with somebody being unapologetic with it, it's a refreshing sight to see. And I would like to see that her doing speaking out in that way would kind of light the fire of other people who might see that story and be like, you know what, maybe I can have the same fearlessness and have the same goal to go after something or to fight for something in that same manner. And I feel like it's very encouraging for her to do that.
right, and I agree. And I think what they're trying to do, I honestly, the, people are talking real reckless, um, especially like Trump and a lot of people on Fox News. Like, we already know that there have been like three separate foil plots. Not necessarily. Well, one of them was specifically against her, but I think like the other two were just targeting Democrats and liberals in general. It wasn't specifically about Ilhan Omar, but I think she was on one of their lists. So like we know specifically that there are violent people out here who are like hearing these things and they're being inspired by it, but that's not stopping people from attacking her anyway. So like one is left to assume, okay, these people are trying to actually do something to her. So like I hope I agree with you. I hope this inspires people to say, you know what, um, maybe I should run for office. Maybe I should get out there and get him, because right now I mean, it's her, it's AOC, it's Rashida Tlaib, and a few others. Like I mean, it's their numbers are small, but their impact is massive. Like there's only a handful of them, but they're the most popular people in the house right now. So yeah, I do hope it provides a source of inspiration. And but I mean, it's unfortunate what's happening to her right now, and it's crazy to even see her. They haven't even been in office, what, 4 months. They just got
Yeah.
sworn in January. All right, and it hasn't even been 6 months yet. It hasn't even been a year yet, and this is already happening. Like so, like the disdain for outspoken black people is real. And I mean, I think this story is a perfect example of about why, like, certainly why black and intellectual exists, but why platforms like yours have to exist. Like we are, we're needed right now. um, so yeah, that's just my opinion on that. Did you have any other thing that you wanted to say about that specifically?
Nah, definitely true. And I would say, just to piggyback off that, that it's important for our elected officials that I do look like us to have an agenda that reflects us. Because a
Right,
lot of people have agendas and plans they want to do, but we know it's been a lot of black mayors and a lot of black cities and a lot of cities over the country, and those cities have not changed. Why
right.
is that? So we had to start questioning our officials. We might get them in office, but hey, you need to do these things, and if not, we're not going to vote for you next time. We serious about it. We're not just saying it just to say. But I know a lot of people get discouraged when they vote for somebody and they don't do what they said. They just don't vote at all. But that's not the solution. The solution, I believe, is to go after that person and say, hey, if you don't vote for us, I mean, if you don't do what you said you was going to do, that agenda, we're not voting for you in the next election.
Yeah, and we're
And that's
yeah
what
we're
it is.
yeah and we're gonna run somebody against you. I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, you said not voting is not the solution, and I agree with that so much, because you hear one of the things that aggravates me. I'm not gonna name any names because I'm not trying to start anything on social media, but one of the things that like I hear a lot is uh people trying to influence others not to like just completely opt out of the political process entirely. Where I think you hit the nail on the head. It's and this is sort of my perspective as well. And I mean you can agree or disagree with what I'm about to say. It's not necessarily about not voting. Like that's not what that's not really the what we should be doing. What we should be doing is if we see a politician that's not doing right by us, if we see a politician like a daggone Rahm Emanuel in Chicago, who is not only not helping us, okay, but actively working against us, okay, actively taking money out of the community, spending $100 million on a police academy that nobody in the community wants, okay, and the CPD is all. Well, I'm not going to go into all of that, but um, yeah, and then if we see politicians behaving like this and moving like this and engaging like this, the solution isn't just to completely just opt out and say, "Well, I'm just going to take my ball and go home." It's to get on the streets and get around politicians who are going to run or not politicians yet. They will be running to be politicians. Get around people who are actually going to you know do right by the community and actually get in, have a black agenda, whether that and hopefully that agenda would include reparations or something like that. And that's how we move forward instead of just because, in my opinion, if we just completely opt out and we just aren't engaged in politics at all, that makes it easier for people who are directly opposed to us to amass more power. So
Yeah.
I don't know how it's helping the black community to just completely disengage. Even though I'm saying like I don't think voting is the be all end all. It is I don't think it's the pathway to liberation, necessarily. I think that's gonna come from within our community. I don't know that a politician, I mean, you might get one politician who's a real radical who might say some things, but we see now what's happening with Ilhan Omar and how the institution of America is going to attack that person incessantly. They're going to go after that person nonstop. They're going to lie about them. They're going to, encourage people to do all sorts of things to them. So yeah. So what's one? I know I'm being kind of long winded, but what's your opinion on that?
No, I agree with you, and I think it's just true. It's something that we have to address as a community. That of course voting is not the all and be all. And of course we need to do way more than just voting. And voting is not everything, but it's very important that we vote, especially in the local elections, because that affects your local community, the local policies that's going on in your affect your kids that go to school, your grandkids, all those people that you know and love, your grandma, how she gets her medicine, everything that affects what she does on a daily basis. So we do need to be key that voting is necessary in that way. However, I do agree to a certain extent that as black people, we need to come up with other solutions other than just voting. Because a lot of
Hmm.
people, I think the frustration with a lot of people is because a lot of those pundits, like you was referring to in the past, get on TV and all they say is our solution, just vote more and vote more, and that would change our situation. But we know that we've been voting for a long time and that haven't just changed our situation. So we need to do more than just voting.
Right.
Voting is a key component to what we need to do, but that's not the only thing. It's a
Right.
lot. It could be 50 things you really could come up, to be honest, that you can
Right.
come up with that we can do other than just voting. Because voting not gonna get it done. Because some of the social policies, some of the things that we need to be done in our community, we can do ourselves. Just look at the Black Panthers when they did, and they had social programs that they did within themselves.
Right.
They didn't ask for government assistance. They wasn't a 501(c). They
Right.
wasn't a nonprofit organization. They just did it on their own.
Right. The programs that they had, yeah, yeah, that's true. And I mean that kind of touches into another topic that I'm not gonna broach it too much in this discussion, but I've been studying a lot of you know anti-capitalist, non-capitalist ways of having sort of like an economy and different like economic perspectives that I've been studying recently. I've been reading a book called Black Marxism by a man named Cedric Robinson, and I mean like there's a lot of there's a lot of unconventional things that we could be doing within the community. It doesn't even require the government, like you said. And so yeah, I certainly agree with that. And I mean, I think I think too. You look at the Democratic Party, and you look at how we have been voting for the Democrats for a very long time, and uh, it's it hasn't turned out the way that I think a lot of people in the '60s, during the civil rights movement, thought it would turn out. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but I mean, a lot of the statistics within our community just are not great. Like, the job numbers, the unemployment numbers, healthcare access, upward mobility. I mean, it's there's so many problems. And you look at environmental problems, like you look at situations like Flint. You know, that still hasn't been solved. And I mean, I know they have a Democrat in office now there locally, but I mean, I don't know. It's going to be tough. But is there anything else that you would like to add before we wrap up this conversation?
All I would just like to add is, you know, don't give up. A lot of people get discouraged when it comes to fighting for black rights or fighting for just anything for black people in general.
Hmm.
And it gets tiring over time, and you want to wear down and give up and like forget, I just want to worry about myself. Because a lot of people have those thoughts, because I've talked to different friends who working in the activist field or working in the field of speaking up for black people. And a lot of times it can be tiring. And some of your biggest opposition can be people who look like you.
Hmm.
But that's okay. Just keep on fighting, never give up. Because if it's something you're really passionate about, something you believe in, then you got to be willing to stand up for it.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, where can the people and the audience find you, Jay?
You can visit the Black Detour at theblackdetour.com. That'd be THEBLACKDETOUR.com. You can also visit us on all social media platforms at the Black Detour, and we're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
All right, perfect. And my name is Brian Lewis. You can find me on Twitter at _ Black Intellect. You can also find a lot of the things that we're writing on blackandintellectual.com. Thank you.